This is the Neurosurgery Podcast. Hi, everybody. JP here. Just wanted to let you know that for the first time in our 5 years of doing this show, we lost footage. Today, we were honored to have on Dr. Ghogawala, the head of the Leahy Clinic in Tufts outside of Boston. He's a phenomenally accomplished academic spine neurosurgeon. He's been the head of many multi-institutional trials, figuring out better ways to take care of our patients, the head of numerous organizations within spine surgery. And so obviously we had him on to talk about his favorite movies. And a few minutes into that conversation, we had a technical glitch and the recording had to be stopped. We lost the audio and video feed from his end of the conversation. So the episode will pick up right after we started talking. You'll see we mentioned how we had to cut out a little bit in the beginning. But without further ado, again, our apologies to Dr. Ghogawala and all of you watching and listening. But here we'll pick it up with Dr. Ghogawala discussing some of his favorite movies. Dr. Ghogawala, you were telling us what captures your imagination, your passion with The Godfather Part 1. Sure. And it's about family, you were saying.
It's all about family. I think everybody can agree on that. Many people see different nuances in the film, but family is where it's at. And for me, it reminds me of my neurosurgery family, and I'm very close to my neurosurgery family. I'm close to my personal family, and this movie explores that in ways that I think no other movie has done. And it's really powerful, and I think we would all agree, it has an impact on anyone who watches it.
Now, it is such a complex series of movies, but in the first one, I'm going to ask you who do you identify with the most in the film, and I'll go first, then JP, and then you can round it out and tell us.
I know who you're going to say, Dr. Wang.
Who am I going to say?
Sonny.
No.
No. Oh, you always say you're the Hulk.
No, I mean it's complicated like that. There's so many possibilities. You're right. Sonny would be a good one, but I actually really identify with Tom. Because Tom is a proceduralist. He's very much about process. He's very much about doing things a certain way and having the legitimacy of that. So my favorite character in the movie, and he's an adopted member of the family. He's the family lawyer, right?
Yes.
But he is part of the family. Is Tom? Okay, so that's for me, and he's not even Italian, I don't think. So JP.
Right. He's German Irish. Well, that's you got me on that one because you always say you're Achilles. You always say you're the Hulk. I thought you would have gone Sonny. So I will, with a brief preamble, and I have to pay homage to my older brother, whose name is Michael. And we have been arguing for over a decade now about who each of us are in this Corleone family. And his name is Michael, so he always says automatically he gets to be Michael. I think he's Sonny, although he's grown out of his temper. And he always says that I'm Fredo, which, of course, no one wants to be Fredo, but I'm the little brother. And so honestly, if I were to, we all aspire to be the Vito, or I guess within Godfather Part 1, before we see where it goes, we aspire to be the Michael, the calm, cold, calculating, controlled one, right? But if I had to pick someone from the first movie, I'll take Clemenza, honestly. The guy is jolly, the guy gets things done, and at the very end of the story, he's the one who's loyal, right? And then we go back, we learn how he's been with Vito from the beginning. He's not the one who betrays him, and he's the one who can get the gun in the bathroom.
I like that. So I guess I'm going to go with the obvious, but it's just how I feel. I love Michael Corleone. I mean, he is the essence of the film in so many ways, and to watch that transformation in him, that reluctant hero, come forward to save his father, I think it's very special, and it's depicted in that film so convincingly that you feel that you're in that hospital, and you feel the tension of that time, and you know that emotion that he feels and his connection to his father and his family is real. And I think that type of loyalty, that type of connection, is what makes neurosurgery special. Because I think most of us, when we finish training, we feel that for our neurosurgery brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and he's such a complicated character. And if we limit our discussion to part 1, so we don't know where his life and his story are going to take us, and we just watch part 1, as you say, he's a reluctant hero. He is a hero. He's the protagonist of the whole series in a sense, but certainly in that movie, he's the one who has the most change over the course of the drama. And he's someone who his father always tried to keep him away from this world, and he served in the army. He went to school unlike any of them, and by disaster and tragedy he was drawn into this world that he didn't want to be a part of. His wife didn't want him in, and so I wonder if you could tell us your association with this reluctant hero. Does this reflect something from your own background? When you were growing up and going to school, did you always know what you wanted to do with your life, or was there some pull that you tried to resist toward this path that you've walked, which has led you to such success and this position of authority in your work now? Did you ever want to maybe say, you know what, maybe I just want to do the cases. I don't want to deal with all this administrative stuff and all these trials and teaching people. I just want to do the cases, but they
Yeah.
pull me back in. What's your affiliation with him?
So it's so interesting that you bring this up, JP, because I do feel like I identify with this concept. And for me, it's early. So I went to, as Mike mentioned, I went to Harvard College, and I went to Harvard College in the '80s, and all the rage in the '80s was investment banking. Okay,
Mm,
so I went to work for Goldman Sachs for summer internship because that's what people did, right? And I was halfway decent at it. It wasn't that complicated, and I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed neurosurgery people perhaps a lot more, but at that time, I really enjoyed it. It
yeah.
was intense. It was focused, and it was a great space to be in. Um, so I was leaning towards going to Wall Street and being a financial analyst. And I was one of these weird people who I applied for the bank jobs and I applied to medical school.
Yeah.
And I was in a, I was in a dilemma because, I got accepted to Harvard Medical School and I got accepted to have a job at Goldman Sachs. And that was a choice to make, right? But I felt like there was something that was drawing me into medical school that was not the immediate gratification of going off and enjoying what you do, but having the fruits of that be in real time as opposed to the delayed gratification that I think all of us know we go through with med school residency and so forth. So
Mm.
um, I do identify with that, but I think for me it was earlier that I felt like I was drawn back into medicine. And I come from a Indian immigrant family, so from my parents' perspective, it was drilled into me as a young kid that the best thing to do would be either to be a doctor or an engineer. So I grew up with that, but in college I started to move away from that a little bit, and then got brought back into it really at the last second.
Wow. And so I never knew that about you. And I can see that if you had gone into Wall Street, and we're about the same age, right? So, like, I remember all my classmates at Stanford were headed towards investment banking, and you
Yeah.
would have been so successful at it. I mean, but what a loss it would have been for neurosurgery had you gone that route. So, okay, well, so interesting enough, if you're Michael, then that makes Tasmin K, right? I mean, that's a very conflicted situation,
That's a
right?
very conflicted situation.
But let's move on in the spirit of Wall Street and all that. You said one of your favorite movies is also Titanic, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I this one I don't understand at all. Titanic, it's a great movie, but it seemed to me so unidimensional. Like I feel like during the movie, and I watched it with Amy. We are just dating then. I kind of felt bad for the Billy Zane character. You know,
Yeah.
the rich douchey husband that Kate Winslet's betrothed to. I kind of liked him better. I mean, I was like, God, the guy. I know he's kind of a douche, but he's handsome and he's like. I felt like he was trying, but
Yeah.
tell us why you love Titanic and what what
Real
is
quick,
it?
Real
Yeah, go.
quick, let me put a pin on that, Dr. Wang, because you're brushing elbows with this huge trend that's happening on the internet these days, where people are rewatching Beauty and the Beast, and they say the Beast is the bad guy and Gaston is the good guy. So you're
That's so
you're kind of
cool.
like you're right. You're rubbing elbows with it. It's like, oh, this guy is muscular. He's the hunter in the village. Some
Yeah.
crazy monster abducts the pretty girl down the street, and he goes to rescue her. So we're watching the Titanic. You make a point. I mean, this guy, he's engaged. He buys her nice things. He takes her on a trip, and she runs off with a scruff down in the low cabin.
Listen,
Wisconsin.
I'm not a bro. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I was not captain of the football team. I was always on the outs. But I get it. Like, I mean, like those, they're like, kings of the universe. So anyhow, okay. So please tell us about
Yeah.
Titanic.
So Titanic, I know, people in residency would make so much fun of me that I like this movie, and they were like perplexed by it because, Titanic was like a big thing during our neurosurgery residency time, right? Um, and I was like making bets with people that this is going to be the biggest movie of all time, even early on. And so, and I think I actually, Bob Carter was reminding me of this. I think I actually was bragging about the fact that I saw this movie 5 times before I finished neurosurgery residency. So there's a little bit of an insane side of me in that sense. But Titanic is an underdog story, you know, and who can't love that? That was very, very attractive to me, you know. And also, I think, when you think about what cinema is and what, you know, was created there, was an absolutely believable Titanic. I mean,
Hmm.
you got onto the scenes from that boat and so forth, and you could feel like you were there. And that's the magic of real cinema, that you actually believed that there was a Titanic boat that they filmed this on. And I was blown away by the cinematography and just how impressive that all was. And quite honestly, my seeing it a second and a third time, I'm not really sure whether the five is accurate, but people in my residency said it was. But when you watch that movie more than once, there was real genius behind the cinematography there. It was spectacular.
So
And
that's really interesting.
in some ways, it's kind of like Star Wars. Like Star Wars today, when you look at it, does not look that impressive. And I don't mean to hate on Star Wars because I loved it during that time, because it was believable in that era that you could see these spaceships and you could see, what was being created, and it was just phenomenal. Today, we're just used to special effects at a different level, but I thought that Titanic made it believable that you were on that boat that was destined to sink, and you could, you know, get involved in a, complete underdog story as part of the process.
That's really interesting that it's the technical achievement and the execution of the film itself that so captures you.
That was
I will say, I'll go on the record. The only movie I've gone back to see in theaters multiple times, which I think I went 4 times, was Tropic Thunder, and I'm proud to say that I would go see it again on a big screen if I could. But I wonder then if the cinematography, the technical spectacle, if you will, that Cameron achieved with that film, if that captured you so, is there a favorite staging or a favorite shot that he achieved in that when you go back and watch the movie still makes you just go, wow?
yeah. So I think for me, it's not the iceberg or anything like that. It was that dinner scene when, Jack is with all these like, super rich, fancy people. And,
Yeah.
he basically, I'm going to forget the details here, even though I've seen it so many times, but he has this, note that he sends uh, to
Kate Winslet, right?
yeah, Kate Winslet. What was her character's?
Oh, if I were a good podcast host, I would know.
it's just like just totally just escaping my mind. But anyway, so he sent this note to Kate Winslet when he was at that table, and then they met at the top of the stairs.
Rose, of
Rose,
course, of
Rose,
course.
yes, Jack and Rose, uh,
Yeah,
and he waited for her at the top of the stairs, and then they went running through the ship.
yeah.
That's pure fantasy. It's pure escapism, but I thought it was great. And
Okay,
again,
so
yeah, go ahead, go
so
ahead.
so 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 you like that. So I'm going to ask you the burning question in my mind is last year there was Ocean Gate, the Titan submersible.
Mm.
Now, given the option to go with your wife or kids to go see the Titanic underwater in this submarine, not knowing that it's going to collapse or whatever, you're going to
Yeah,
die.
yeah.
Would you do? Would you pay money to do it? Would you say, "Oh my God, I want to see the Titanic," or is it all about the movie?
I would absolutely pay anything to go see the Titanic and not die in the process.
Right.
No, it's a great a sunken ship is just a great romantic story, and there's something really appealing about that. But to answer your question, yes, I would pay, and I would pay a lot to do it.
And the
Is it?
old lady, I mean, the old lady that died recently, that was on a, that there's some element of truth to the story, right? It's not
Yeah,
totally true, but
that's right.
there's a kernel of truth there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so moving on, so Titanic. Okay, so very different. So tell us about this one. Also blows my mind as
I
well.
know, I know.
La La Land. I mean, like musical. It's a musical.
It's a musical. It's not a manly film. Um, but it is, there's some times in a film when, and I think, La La Land was not one of those movies that I was like running to go and see. I think this is one of those movies, honestly, that Tess even dragged me to see. But at the end of the movie, when they pull off that exit and they come back into that nightclub, right? And there's the fantasy that they still connected, when they look at each other and so forth. Again, I'm gonna bring this back to like Titanic and to Godfather. There's that element of truth in loyalty that it's kind of a musical movie and all that, but that surprised me, and that is to me what was memorable is that despite the fact that their paths had gone so separately, they were together early on in the movie, and there was that recognition, even for a brief moment, that we were there, and we remember, where we were before, you know, uh, Emma Stone's character took off. And
Well, that's a beautiful sentiment, and I mean, you're doing my job for me, tying the thread through these movies here. So it seems like what really captures you across these movies is that sense of connection. I mean, you said it yourself, the loyalty,
yeah,
and so you know, so many of the movies we've talked about so far in this short series we're doing, where we say, what are neurosurgical movies to you? What movies do you think about when you think of neurosurgery? They've been about intense training and technical excellence and discipline and rigor. And I think this just keeps coming back to what you said at the very beginning. It's the sense of family and the sense of neurosurgical community that you've found over the years of your career. Um, Maybe you could take a moment and name some names. Who are some of the people that have really formed your neurosurgical family throughout the years? Mentors, trainees, people of your own vintage. It seems to be such an important part of your life that you think about so much. Take a moment and give voice to them.
sure. No, I appreciate that, JP. I'm going to embarrass Mike a little bit here, but I have an
Good.
example, truly an illustration of this. So, Mike mentioned, both of us have been former chairs of the spine section, and we get to know people on the spine section, very, very well. We get to know each other's families, and we really connect. And um, there was a time when my wife's father um, called me, and he was in London, and he had spinal stenosis with a spondylolisthesis, so something that we all think about a lot. And his heart function was poor, and he had an ejection fraction of like 30% or 25%, but something bad for heart. And the doctors in London said, you can't have surgery. You got a bad heart. And he loved to walk, and it was a huge aspect of his quality of life. So Tasneem said, can you do something about this? So I said, let's bring him to Boston, and we'll get this addressed. And it turns out you cannot operate on your family or even your father-in-law. And so the plan that I had was going to fall apart because, the nurses basically like said, no, you can't do this.
Hmm.
So I was sort of stuck. And then I thought to myself, who would actually be better than me to do an MIS surgery? Mike Wang. So I called Mike and I said, Mike, I just need to ask a favor. My father's flown here from London. My father-in-law's flown here from London. He desperately needs surgery. He's got bad heart. And would you, consider seeing him to see whether there's something you could do for him surgically? Mike's response was, Zoe, tell Tasneem to bring him tomorrow to Miami. I will get this taken care of. They can stay at my house, but we will get this fixed. And then 3 days later, he calls me after doing the surgery and he says, Zoe, it's all good. It's all done. And that next day, he's walking in Miami, by the ocean, and he's back to life. But what, for me, this was, you can find surgical expertise, but it's knowing that you can pick up the phone, call Mike Wang, and his answer is not, yeah, of course, call my secretary, we're going to get this all set up. It was, it is taken care of. Just come. Get on a flight to Miami. It's going to be done. That's family, you know, and that to me is what makes neurosurgery so special because we have these relationships with people that are very strong, and people come through when you need them to come through.
Well, Zoe, you're far too kind. I mean,
Wow.
it's such an honor to know your mom, your wife and her dad, and then her mom, and meet them in Miami. And look, so many surgeons have this wonderful experience that they can help patients. You do every day, and this fraternity that we're in, if you will, or sorority, or whatever you want to call it, this club where we can help people this way is why we do this podcast. And I thank you for entrusting me with your family's lives, but also for the privilege of being able to make that difference. Everybody listening who's a neurosurgeon knows that we do this every day, and it's just part of our lives. So thank you, and thank you for advocating on behalf of the spine section and NAS for surgeons everywhere.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I'll give you one other example, JP, if we have a second.
Oh,
Um,
please.
this is a similar story, but it just illustrates that this sense of loyalty and family is very real in neurosurgery. So I was, how we all are, we fly to meetings and stuff like this. I've gone to a meeting in Chicago, and I get a call from my mother that she's in the hospital with a gallstone pancreatitis, really ill. And my mother is somebody who just never complains, and she's sick enough that she says, could you come and see me? So of course I say yes, I'm going to do this. My parents are living in North Carolina at the
Hmm.
time, so I'm making arrangements and so forth. But she's really ill, and she's at a community hospital, and the doctor has tried to do an ERCP, and it got worse afterwards, and she's now in the ICU. So they're trying to get her transferred to Wake Forest, but there are no beds because they're at full capacity. So I say to myself, okay, what do I do? I call Charlie Branch. And I said, Charlie, I said, I know this is not a neurosurgery issue, but my mom's trying to get transferred to Wake Forest. And he's like, so tell her she's accepted. She's coming to
Hmm.
Wake Forest. The chief of surgery is going to see her in the emergency room and get this gallstone pancreatitis taken care of. And I said, do I need to wait for you to call track or anything? He's like, Zoe, she's accepted. Now, Charlie has a different relationship with his hospital administration. I don't think I could ever do that with my administration. But the bottom line is they get a call. She's flown in. She gets taken care of exactly as Charlie said it would. And I didn't realize until 2 weeks later, Charlie wasn't even home. He was in Texas visiting his son, on vacation. He never said it on the phone. He was calm as could be. He made those phone calls while he was visiting his son, and he didn't even mention it. It's just that's who we are as a neurosurgery community, and to me, I think that's what makes it great.
Well, that's a beautiful story. Those are beautiful stories. I appreciate the chance to make Dr. Wang uncomfortable, embarrassing him with praise. And those stories, it wasn't my plan to get stories like that in these episodes, but I'm so glad that you share them because much like how we watch movies and we aspire to be like the heroes on the screen, I will tell you personally, as a current trainee and someone who has been watching you and all of your friends be neurosurgeons for almost 10 years now, aspiring to be like you, all of us who are in training want to be that person, the one who can call someone, but we want to be the one who's called and
Yeah,
has the opportunity to say, it's taken care of, don't worry about it. It's just like in residency, I always say you want to work in a place where the right thing is always going to happen for the patient. And we're all jockeying for the privilege of being the one to do it.
yeah,
And so, similarly, I think, man, life goals are to be someone who a friend would call and who could just say, it's taken care of.
yeah. I
What a great privilege to be in that position and to have that kind of relationship with someone on both ends of it.
yeah.
Um,
Well said.
well, Dr. Gogawala, this conversation has been a long time coming, and again, it tickles me that we finally get you on the show and it's to talk about your favorite movies. But this has been a beautiful conversation, honestly, and I look forward to having you back sometime to talk about the slip trials, the myelopathy trial, organized neurosurgery, spine surgery, any of your actual day job, and the stuff that any reasonable podcast in neurosurgery would have you on to talk about. But we're the fun guys, so
Yeah.
thank you
No,
so much for taking the time out of your busy day. You can see Dr. Wang's up busier than both of us put together out there
only because
calling in from the OR.
yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing these experiences and thoughts with us.
JP, Mike, thank you. This was great. I'm so honored to be asked to do this. And thanks again.